Are you struggling to set headers for your HTTP client requests? You're not alone. Today, we're going to tackle how to set authorization and content type headers when making REST service calls using HttpC client. I totally get it. It can be really frustrating when you know what you want to do, but the code just doesn't seem to cooperate. Many developers face this issue when working with HTTP client, especially when it comes to setting headers. Here's the specific question we're addressing today. A user asked, where can I set headers to REST service calls when using simple HTTP client? They provided some code and mentioned they want to add authorization and content type headers. Sound familiar? Let's dive into the solution. So what's the issue here? When using HttpC client, headers are crucial for authentication and content type specification. If they're not set correctly, your requests might fail or return unexpected results. Let's break down how to do this properly. And stick around. At the end of this video, I'll share a quick tip that can save you time and headaches when working with HTTP client. To set the headers for the HTTP client request, the user should first create an instance of the HTTP client. This is already done in the provided code. Next, the user needs to set the authorization header. This can be done by creating a new authentication header value and assigning it to the default request headers of the client. After setting the authorization header, the user should also set the content type header. This is important for the server to understand the format of the data being sent. Now the user can proceed to create the content for the post request. This is done using the form URL encoded content, which is already set up in the provided code. Finally, the user can make the post request using the PostAsync method. This will send the request with the headers and content that have been set up. Fun fact, did you know that the first web request ever made was in 1990? It was a simple request to retrieve a document. Look how far we've come since then. Now, let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach suggests using HTTP Client Factory for managing your HTTP client instances. This method allows for the reuse of HTTP messages from a pool, making it ideal for setting default headers that apply to all requests. For adding a content type header, you can use PostAsJSON async or PostAsXML async methods. However, for authorization headers, the user recommends adding them directly to the default request headers. That wraps up that answer. Let's move on to another one. An alternative approach shared by another user involves setting the content type directly on the HTTP content object instead of using the default request headers. They encountered an exception when trying to add the content type to the default headers, which led them to this solution. Let's move forward and look at another answer. An alternative approach suggested by another user is to cache the HTTP client instance. This way, you can avoid setting headers that might interfere with other requests. Instead of using PostAsync, they recommend using SendAsync with a custom HTTP request message. Here's that quick tip I promised. Always double-check your headers before making a request. A small typo can lead to big headaches. And there you have it. You should now be able to set your authorization and content type headers with ease. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks on coding and development.